Hey guys, this is Connor from SuppleStrength, and today I'm going to talk about self-myofascial release. Self-myofascial release is a form of exercise which usually incorporates one of these, either a foam roller or a ball of some sort. Here we have a peanut, one of my personal favorites. So what is self-myofascial release? Myofascial release is a manual therapy technique that therapists, massage therapists, or anyone who does any kind of body work will sometimes use to release dysfunctions or limitations within the fascia. I'm not going to get too deep into the science because most people frankly don't care. If you want to know more about the background to it, you can check out the accompanying article which is in the description box below. But to give you a very brief outline, the fascia is a system-wide membrane which runs throughout the body. It surrounds the muscle fibers and other internal structures and basically connects all of the body together from the head to the tips of our fingers and our toes. When we have limitations or restrictions within the fascia, it can limit how we move and also how we feel. So when we start to release these dysfunctions, we get a wide range of benefits. We're going to come to those shortly. Self-myofascial release is essentially using similar techniques on yourself, which I'm a huge fan of, and I introduce it to pretty much every client I've worked with over the last few years. Before we get started, it's important for you to recognize that this is an educational resource. This isn't a means of self-diagnosing. If you have some kind of pain or injury and you're not sure what's going on, particularly if you have a recent injury to the area, go and see a healthcare professional and get a proper diagnosis. Also, if you have any kind of medical health issues, and in general, just get clearance before you start this or any type of exercise. I do not want to be held responsible if you do something crazy. You may have seen in the first video that we have 5 foundations of exercise at SuppleStrength. If you want more information on those, check out the article on SuppleStrength.com. Self-myofascial release is the first one we are talking about for several reasons. Mainly, I believe it can give people not only the quickest, but the most significant improvements in how they feel and move. It will set you up excellently to achieve the other 4 foundations with more ease. I first got introduced to self-myofascial release 7 or 8 years ago. I was working as a fitness instructor and doing some personal training. At that time, I had a brief idea of what it was about and I used it with quite a few clients. At the time, to me, it was more of, I used it as if I would use stretching back then as well. It's something you just add on to the end of the workout and say, yeah, this is going to help to cool down and prevent injuries. I hadn't really looked too much into the science of it and was more focused on the strength and cardio side of things. However, I used it quite frequently. I saw benefits, but again, at that time, I didn't take it too seriously and the techniques I was using weren't very effective. I actually drifted away from self-myofascial release in my own training and started to focus solely on getting big and strong. I was in my late teens and early 20s and my main focus was getting big and strong. It's common for a lot of, especially young men at that age, to have a singular focus. And I can't say that I regret it at all because it definitely gave me confidence and it also gave me some kind of focus to channel my energy and probably got me or kept me out of a bit of trouble as well. There was a turning point. So I was at a respiratory seminar in my second year of physiotherapy. I think it was my second year. And the seminar was being taught by a lecturer. And she was quite far along in her pregnancy at the time. I remember we were told to get our stethoscopes from our bags. So I reached over to get my stethoscope, and as I bent down, I made quite a loud groan, something like, and it was a real effort, clearly, for me just to simply bend over and get something out of my bag. This generated a bit of laughter from the class, which was all good, But the lecturer actually said to me, Connor, I'm so many months pregnant and I'm not making those kind of noises. This seemingly trivial moment actually stimulated quite a change in me. So I started to suddenly become aware of the fact that I wasn't as athletic and strong and fit as I thought I was. Sure, I was strong. I'd definitely got a lot stronger and put on some muscle mass, but other areas of my movement had significantly deteriorated. After that incident in the seminar, I decided to re-explore methods of improving my mobility, and that led me back to self-myofascial release and really looking at how I could benefit from this practice. I came across quite a few different resources, one of them being Kelly Starrett and Mobility Wad. He's the kind of well-known CrossFit physio, and I started to practice using self-myofascial release on a frequent basis. I would try out different tools and different techniques to see what worked. Almost immediately, I started to see massive benefits to how I felt and how I moved. I had a few little tweaks from my time just lifting heavy weights, and they started to clear up. And overall, I just felt hugely better. So I started to reintroduce it to clients, friends, and family members, anyone who would listen basically, and I would try out these methods. The results seemed to be pretty consistent across the board. Anyone I introduced it to using the right techniques seemed to get benefits. When it came time to choose my physiotherapy dissertation, I actually researched the effectiveness of self-myofascial release using a foam roller on hamstrings, flexibility and knee range of motion. The results were significant, with all bar one person improving quite significantly after just 5 minutes of foam rolling. This further inspired me to basically influence people to use this method. It was commonly neglected, and it still is, and also commonly done incorrectly, and still is. So that's led me to here, where I've now been working as a physio for 4 years and have used this with many clients and seen significant benefits across the board. Before we get into some of the specific benefits and techniques that you should implement, I want to discuss something very important, which is good versus bad pain. When you start to do self-myofascial release, it's not the most comfortable thing. It could be compared to stretching, I suppose. When you first stretch a muscle and you're not familiar with that sensation, it can feel like a bit of an attack on the body, and you think, oh, I need to stop, come away from that, what's going on? What I encourage you to do is to go slow, listen to your body, and don't put too much pressure on at first. When you do it, it should feel like a good pain. So when I say a good pain, I mean that when you apply the pressure with whichever tool you're using, you'll start to feel tension dissolve and release. As you maintain pressure on a point, it will start to get easier and more comfortable, and actually the sensation of digging into the muscle and the fascia should feel quite relieving and relaxing. Bad pain is pain that you can tell is doing damage to the body. So when you're doing self-myofascial release, that might feel like a pain when you press there and it doesn't feel good. It feels like it's not clearing, and it feels like you shouldn't be there. The body is talking to you, listen and come off of that point. If you're not sure, always steer on the side of caution and assume it's a bad pain. Feel free to send me a message or go away and do some more research before you go into that point. You don't want to be hitting sensitive structures, and you don't want to be hitting nerves, things like that. So for example, the back of the knee is a common one. It can feel quite intense and uncomfortable there, and it's not an area you should go into liberally. So there's certain points you can work, but if you're not sure, back off. You can still get significant benefits from hitting the main points where you're not really going to cause damage. There are quite a few studies now coming out to prove the effectiveness of self-myofascial release. They're relatively young, and it's not actually been researched for that many years. So we're going to need a few more years to really discover the full spectrum of benefits it can provide. But there's a reason that all of the top sports clubs and all gyms and clinics are implementing this method, it works, okay? So there are 7 major physical benefits with self-myofascial release. First, we have a reduction in muscle tension and hypertonicity. Muscle tension is basically what will lead to a higher risk of injury or spasm. For example, a lot of people get it in the lower back. So if you spend a lot of time sitting and you're not moving much, you can feel it tense up. And then it gets to a point where it's so tight you can't move, or movement is just really painful. Getting some self-myofascial release done can significantly reduce this tension within the muscles and the fascia. You'll also experience a breakdown in trigger points, and some people refer to them as knots or adhesions. Whatever you want to call them, we have these dysfunctions within the fascia and within the muscles, and self-myofascial release is a great way to literally get right into those and start to clear them. Next, we have improved posture. So self-myofascial release itself isn't going to suddenly make you have amazing posture. What it will do is make it easier for you to get into a position of good posture. So for example, most of us have restrictions within the hip flexors from sitting down too much. Now what this does, it makes it difficult. So when we stand up, our hips are so tight that it kind of draws forward and it throws everything out. That's just one example, but basically if we get some self-myofascial release done, especially if we combine it with our mobility work, it can open up these restrictions and allow us to get into positions of good posture. Most of us know when we try and stand up straight, we last for 20 seconds, maybe a minute, and we forget. Maybe we're distracted by something else, or it's just physically uncomfortable to actually maintain. Self-myofascial release is an excellent way to make this easier. You will also experience an increased mobility and freedom of movement. So your ability to put the body into different positions and things like that will improve quite significantly. So if you, whatever it is, if you're trying to get under the car to change something there or whatever you have to do, self-myofascial release will help you get into those positions. You're going to also experience a reduced risk of injury. So when we clear these dysfunctions and increase our mobility, it means that we're less at risk of the common injuries that some of us get. If you're a footballer, for example, and you overreach for a ball and you pull your groin or hamstring, those kind of injuries can be significantly reduced when you start to do this. Next, we have an increased athletic performance. So it's still fairly early days for the studies in this, but so far they're starting to show some good crossover to athletic performance. Commonly, so if you've ever had a deep tissue massage or sports massage for the lower body, for example, you'll often feel when you jump up that you feel lighter on your feet, you've got a bit more bounce in your step, and that's a clear indication, to me at least, that it can improve your athletic performance. Finally, you're going to experience a quicker recovery from workouts. So DOMS, which is delayed onset muscle soreness, is the pain that we commonly get after a workout, maybe the next day or 2 days after. Self-myofascial release is a way to speed up that process, and it will basically reduce some of the pain that you feel from that. Just as one more point to add, which isn't in the graphic, is better and deeper sleep. So it's still early stages of the research for this, but the idea is that self-myofascial release can stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. So the parasympathetic is what slows us down. So para, like paralyzed, we stop, we slow down, we relax. Okay, so by doing it before bed, it can help quite significantly with getting better and deeper sleep. Let's move on to the psychological benefits. There are 4 that I've listed here, which are self-awareness, independence, general mood, and a reduction in stress. So the self-awareness, when you start to explore the body with self-myofascial release, you're going to have to really pay attention to what you're feeling and search through the body to find points of restriction. That will massively improve your self-awareness. So day to day, you'll start to pay more attention if you feel a slight limitation somewhere. Maybe there's a certain activity you're doing, putting a jacket on, and you can feel it triggering something. all of those points of restrictions will start to become more obvious to you. Secondly, it will increase your independence. So a lot of people, they don't want to worry about that. They want to outsource it to a professional, which is fine. If you're busy and you just don't have time or don't care about doing it yourself, no worries, outsource it. But what it will do is put some of the power back into your hands. So you'll be able to take control of these limitations and also reduce your risk of injury, increase your recovery yourself. Next, we have general mood. So there's a direct link between the physical and the mental. Now, when you start to release this tension within the body, you're going to have improved your physical condition from the point where you've lied down to do the work and when you stand up. That in and of itself will significantly improve your mood. It could be due to releasing some endorphins within the body as well. Potentially the fact that you have to slow down and breathe deeply when you do it. There's a whole range of reasons why it will actually improve your mood. Finally, we have a reduction in stress. So as we've said, there's a direct link between the physical and mental, and when you start to release some of this physical stress or tension within the body, you will experience the same effects from the mind. Let's get into some of the techniques. There are a few common mistakes that people make when doing self-myofascial release. Firstly, we have rushing over the body part. So most of the time when you see people do self-myofascial release, they're kind of rolling quickly back and forth over a body part and not really going slow enough to identify where the points of tension are. Is much more effective if you can spend the same amount of time going slowly through the muscle and focusing on the points where you hold the tension, and also just really listening to what your body's telling you at each point of the muscle. Before we get into the specific techniques, you need to prepare. So we want to spend a minimum of 2 minutes on each muscle group. 2 minutes is the time that it takes to create a permanent change within the body. So whether you're doing any stretching or foam rolling, whatever it is, 2 minutes is a good amount of time to know that you're really going to have some more lasting change. Next, we have checking the technique. You found a good resource, and I'm going to link a playlist of videos which shows the techniques for different body parts. So make sure you're comfortable with the technique before you get started. Also, of course, make sure that there's nothing that excludes you. If you've got any of the health conditions or problems that might mean you shouldn't do this, make sure you're aware of that. Next, we have the equipment. So you're going to need either a foam roller, a tennis ball or cross ball, something like that before you get started. It's best for people who are first getting started to choose something not quite so hard. So you might go for a smooth and softer roller initially and then work up to anything towards the grid roller. So the grid roller is a much more dense roller, which will basically get deeper in and release more of the restrictions. With balls, a lot of people prefer to start with a tennis ball because it's, again, quite soft, so you don't have to push too hard, and then progressing on to a lacrosse ball is best for most people. This next one isn't essential, but it's always best if you can do self-myofascial release when the muscles are already warm. So when the muscles are warm, they're going to be a lot more responsive to self-myofascial release. They're going to release quicker, and basically it will give you more benefit for the time. That being said, if you don't have the time or whatever is going on, if you have to do it on cold muscles, it will still work, just not quite as effectively. Next is about timing. So when to release a muscle. Now, it's best to release this tension when you first notice it. So if you're a runner, for example, and you start to feel a slight tweak in the calf, that's when you should be getting into it, not 3 or 4 weeks down the line when you risk injuring the muscle because you haven't released it yet. You want to do it when you first become aware of the tension, and that will prevent most of the injuries that you're at risk of from coming on. Finally, try to relax. When you do this, it can be quite uncomfortable at first, as we discussed, so it's really important for you to breathe deeply, relax, go slow, and as much as possible, try and take it easy. A good indication of if you're doing this well is if you're keeping your facial muscles relaxed. So if your face is really tensed up and you're squinting, then the body is going to take that as a sign that it shouldn't be relaxing. Now we're going to go on to our 4 basic techniques. Firstly, you want to try and roll towards the heart. This will encourage venous return, which is blood flow back to the heart. If you need to change direction to go away from the heart or roll laterally, that's not a problem at all. If you feel you need to hit the right spot, go with the flow, see what the body needs. But in a lot of cases, it can be useful to roll towards the heart. Again, not essential, but it's a good foundation to try and work off of. When you're working through the muscle, pay attention to the points where you feel an increased tension. This isn't the bad pain we spoke about earlier. It's good pain, but it's points where you feel an increase in that good pain. If you focus your time on these areas, it will be a lot more efficient and you'll get a lot more done in the time you spend working. Next, we have breathing deeply and slowly into your abdomen. This will help the body to relax and basically again increase the effectiveness of the exercise. Finally, take your time. The slower you go through the body, the muscles, the fascia, the more awareness you're going to gain about where you hold tension. So slow down and pay attention to what you're feeling at each point. We have 2 advanced techniques. In the video playlist that's linked, you can see all of these techniques, and if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message. A soft tissue release is the first one. So essentially a soft tissue release is where you hold steady on a point of increased tension. So when you have the ball or the roller and you're rolling through the muscle slowly and you feel that point of increased tension, you know that's where it's held, hold whichever tool you're using on that point. From there you can slowly start to stretch out the muscle you're working. For example, if I'm hitting a point in the bicep with my elbow bent, I would maintain pressure on that point and slowly straighten out. This can significantly improve the effectiveness of this style of exercise, and doing that 5 or 10 or up to 15 times can massively improve how you feel very quickly. The second advanced technique we have is contracting and then relaxing. So when you're working on a muscle, if you feel the muscle's a bit reluctant to release, it's taking a bit longer than you want, what you can do is start to slowly squeeze the muscle and then slowly relax the muscle. It's important you don't suddenly relax because it could end up almost being too uncomfortable if it gets too deep into it. So take it slow contract, slow relax. Doing that a few times can help massively. When you contract, just hold for 5 or so seconds, and it's not going full intensity. We're going for about 20% of our max effort. Okay guys, so that covers our self-myofascial release talk. As I said, in the description box below, I'm going to link the playlist which has videos for most of the body with the progressions and different techniques you can use. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to send me a message. You can find me over on SuppleStrength.com or at SuppleStrength on Instagram, Twitter. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from you and also to the next topic, which we will cover soon. Take care.